Breaking tonight, Russia trying to tighten its grip as we speak on Venezuela in total defiance of the United States' demand that Russia vacate the socialist dictatorship. There are new reports this evening that Russia is sending even more troops to the region. You know, not since the Cuban Missile Crisis in 1962 have we had such an enemy presence in our own hemisphere. This cannot and this will not be allowed. Vladimir Putin, Nicolas Maduro, you are both on notice. All of this, as today marks the 500th day 5 Americans have been held hostage in a Caracas prison by Nicolas Maduro. This is a story that we originally broke, and we've continued to report on exclusively right here on Trish Regan Primetime. I want to give you a quick update. The Vice President, as I said, he did, as well as Mike Pompeo, meet with American families whose loved ones are being held there. And I spoke with the daughters, as well as one of the wives of one of the hostages there. You know, they've had no communication with their father, with their husband, because of the power outages there. So there's a lot of concern that keeps mounting. Joining me right now for a look at how we deal with all of this and how we deal with Vladimir Putin down there is former Trump Deputy National Security Advisor, K T McFarland. It is good to see you, ma'am. Thank you for coming on the program.
It's an honor and a pleasure, and congratulations to you and this primetime success, Trish.
Thank you.
Thank
you, KT. All right. So what's your advice here? What's your advice and what are you hearing from the administration in terms of how you approach this? Because this is, you know, this is a little different than Syria. This is right here in our hemisphere.
Yeah, this is.
You know, 3 hours from Miami. And we got a problem because all the bad guys are there. Being led, really, by the likes of Vladimir Putin, who's now sending, we have sources that are saying, some special forces into the region and possibly more. KT, how do we get Nicolas Maduro to go?
Well, first of all, understand that Putin doesn't care about Venezuela. He doesn't want to get stuck with that and rebuilding Venezuela. When they had Cuba, it practically broke them. So what he's doing in Venezuela is not establishing a military presence that he wants to build out. He's looking for a bargaining chip. He's looking for leverage. Now, what does he want back from that? In 1962, as you just pointed out, in the Cuban Missile Crisis, America had put nuclear weapons, missiles in Turkey that could be aimed at Russia. Well, they responded by sending nuclear weapons to Cuba. What did we do? How did we solve it? At the end of the day, the Russians left Cuba, and we took the missiles out of Turkey. So I think what Putin wants, he wants to trade. He's doing this because he wants us out of Ukraine, where President Trump has been very tough. You know, he imposed new sanctions on the Russians, and he's armed the Ukrainians with lethal weapons. And Putin doesn't like that.
Okay, so, you know, you guys are messing around in my backyard. I'm going to mess around in yours? Is that what this is? Tit for tat?
Yeah.
Okay, so knowing
it's a
that.
tit for tat, but it's also leverage.
Knowing that, you know, how do we approach this? Because there is a real crisis there, and people are really suffering there right now because whether they don't have food, they don't have water, and they're growing increasingly frustrated, understandably so, because they have a criminal regime there in power that can't keep the lights on. I mean, they can't help them with basic necessities. So how do the people manage to get Nicolas Maduro out when, you know, the Russians are helping to keep him there?
It was one of the first things that I took up as Deputy National Security Advisor in the Trump administration. How do you deal with Venezuela? And this was before the Russians made their move. And here's what we concluded. You know, President Trump was elected to get out of these forever wars and not keep fighting wars of intervention. What we concluded was that the thing that made the most sense in South America, Latin America, and particularly in Venezuela, have it be a regional solution. The Organization of American States. There are some powerful and wealthy countries in South America that can work together to step up and solve the problem. Now, that's really good for a bunch of reasons. It's good for them to show they can get something done and work together. It's good for us because it gets the conclusion we want with us without having to put American troops anywhere near it. Yeah. And then finally, it sends a signal to everybody else that they're capable. The problem, though, is how do you get rid of Maduro?
Well, you know, you make him an offer he can't refuse, I guess. Go ahead.
Well, but now here's the problem with getting rid of any dictator particularly brutal dictators, is they don't want to go because they think their alternative is the international criminal courts and maybe being executed. It's a tragic thing because Maduro needs to be punished beyond belief, but you may not get him out in time. So the better solution maybe he should go live in Cuba. Maybe he should get free passage to Cuba, and then the rest of the world steps in.
Right, but you know, he's probably in a position where he's quite fearful, right? Because the Cubans are saying, all right, you're only worth something to us if you're there. And if you can't keep the oil spigot open, which is why they relied so much on Venezuela, then you're no good to us. So he may be worried for literally his life. And so he doesn't know who to trust. And, you know, it's certainly not us. I get it. We don't like him either. But to your point, to be realistic about this situation. John Bolton, right here on this show, offered him a deal. He said, listen, you know, go live in a villa somewhere nice on the sea and you know, put this all behind you. But getting from point A to point B, I guess, is easier said than done with these guys. But we've done it before, right?
Well, yeah, but that's why it's important to have a regional solution and to tell the Russians we're not going to play this little game. And that if Maduro does hear from enough people that he's got an easy out, he can go get the villa, he can live nicely for the rest of his life, and that's an incentive for him to go. The worse it gets in Venezuela, the worse it gets for Maduro. And if his alternative is to leave in a coffin or to leave on a plane, he may choose to leave on a plane.
You'd think he would take the plane. Just real quickly, Colombia, Brazil, they're still not saying, okay, we want to intervene in a meaningful way. At what point do they realize they kind of got it? Because if they don't, they're going to continue with a massive immigration crisis themselves with these refugees bleeding over into their border.
Well, that's why I think that the diplomacy the United States can use behind the scenes is extremely important. You know, President Trump got along very well with the president of Brazil. That was a very successful meeting. And that kind of leadership that Brazil could take for the whole region would be extremely important, not just for Brazil, not just for the region, but it shows that, you know, Latin America has a lot of capabilities, and they should be able to step up and use them. They could be a very wealthy, successful partner.
That would be good. KT,
Agreed.
Good to see you. Thank you.